Please welcome to the stage Brian Harris, Executive Vice President and Chief Technology Officer of SAS, and Ruba Borno, Vice President of Global Specialists and Partners for Amazon Web Services, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Mandeep Singh.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see everyone at the Bloomberg House, and it's going to be a very exciting conversation. So, Brian, I'm going to kick off with you. You guys have been a leader in predictive analytics, and we know we've just witnessed a technology wave in Gen AI, which is proving to be one of the fastest in the history of technology cycle. So what is it that you are doing with your clients when it comes to adoption and how you are going about, pivoting to generative AI?
Well, let's talk about why we're all racing towards this destination. It feels like we're all, pervasively moving towards it. And I think first you got to ask, let's just set up the challenge, right? We've got this information overload scenario that's constant, which is organizations are generating exponentially more data every day with no end in sight. And the capacity to consume and make sense of this information is limited really by the number of people you can have in a company to process it. And so there's this information gap. And of course, what we've been doing for decades, right, in this world is we add technology to organizations to help them close this information gap and really find opportunity in that information gap, right? Some of it's confusion fatigue, but there is a huge opportunity. I think this generative AI and agentic AI represents a very big step function in bending the curve and closing the information gap and the scale and capacity of human decision making. And I think that's what's most important right now to focus on. But it comes with, some inconsistent results. And I think that for right now, I think we've seen the trust conversation we're having a lot about this is that when generative AI, agentic AI works well, it's incredible. When it doesn't, it's pretty poor. And I think what we need to see is a more nuanced conversation of how to use the right AI for the right use case. And sometimes it's not a generative AI problem. It could be a standard predictive modeling problem, machine learning or deep learning problem without having to deal with the non-determinism of large language models.
And Ruba, you guys are the largest public cloud provider, and we are seeing one of the biggest build-outs of AI infrastructure. We're talking about 500 billion plus in hyperscale capex, this year. So what is it that your customers are sort of skeptical about? Because that ROI question keeps coming up pretty much every quarter when companies report earnings. And so what is it that customers are finding it difficult when it comes to, moving to generative AI?
I think with any new technology, there are going to be some impediments and learning along the way that could potentially result in unintended consequences that maybe slow down adoption. And so when we look at what are some of the things that have created unintended barriers for customers, the first is concerns about security. You've also heard concerns about hallucinations with AI. The next is concerns about the cost, and is it going to end up costing me more than I had expected? And maybe one of the other pieces is concerns about the people who are going to use them, and are they actually going to change? So if we tackle each of those things, I think that can help set a customer up for success. And maybe I'll just start off with on the hallucination side, because that's one that has dominated a lot of discussion with AI. I'll take one customer example. We worked with one of our partners with a healthcare provider, a healthcare system, and they have 700,000 members. Their customers call at their most vulnerable moments. They need either medical advice or advice about their coverage that they have. A hallucination in a situation like that could cause real harm. But you can see the opportunity that AI could provide this health provider. They could give them an opportunity to support those customers faster, or 24/7 because the agents don't sleep, or they can also speak any language. So there's a lot of opportunity that it could also give them to improve their customer and patient care. And so addressing the hallucinations was really key there, because it could have completely stopped the adoption of AI. And that's where with Amazon, we use technology that we've actually deployed in other parts of our business, whether it's to determine security vulnerabilities and things like that. And it's a discipline called automated reasoning. And what it allows us to do is to be able to set a policy And if you think in healthcare, there's regulations, you know what's in certain coverage, if it's health insurance coverage, you've got these policies codified. And then check that the AI agent provided you with a response that complies with that policy. So you check the output. That allows those hallucinations, at least in this particular example, to be reduced by 99%. Now, if you think of how they would have done it, let's say, the typical way, they would have put a human in the loop to double check every output that the agent was giving, or in between steps. And then you wouldn't have gotten that real-time response to the customer. And so I think addressing hallucinations, which we're learning more and more how to do every single day, and automated reasoning is a key enabler of that, has been a key driver.
My understanding is there is a pilot phase for all these projects, whether you're deploying agentic AI or something else that you're building with APIs. So why are customers not catching that upfront? Why is it that you're realizing way late that hallucinations is a problem?
Well, I think in a pilot environment, it really depends on how the environment is set up. Is it set up using actual real data, the actual systems that you have in place? And does it mimic the production environment as closely as possible? And I think that, small projects and big projects generally require similar complexity.
Yeah.
Is your data set up? Do you know what your policies are? And actually, that's why we've seen some of the industries that are regulated, think insurance, financial services, and healthcare and life sciences, actually are getting so much great benefit out of AI because they already have those policies codified. Other industries or companies, if they haven't done that yet, it takes them a little bit longer to be able to take the time to codify the policy. And so in the pilot phase, thinking through, does your development environment and your pilot environment mimic your production environment? Do you have the policies codified? Is your data ready? Also, is it a secure environment? Or do you then still have to spend 3 years migrating data to the cloud, moving your systems, making them extensible to the cloud, and also having security in place? And then the last piece, which is one that we probably find as the biggest inhibitor to adoption in a scale-out phase, is the change management for people. So how do you get individuals and employees who own certain processes? We've got entire organizations that have been structured based on complex processes and people who manage those complex processes, to step back and reimagine that process to be end-to-end automated or handled by a collection of agents. And so that change management piece, we've seen a couple of success factors. One is really top-down driven mandates. Do work here. It's just, this is a non-negotiable. You've got to do it. And then also allow the individuals who are responsible for the day-to-day work, who will be most benefited from this automation, to actually come up with it. So we've seen kind of a top-down and bottom-up enablement really being key. But that's one of the biggest drivers, is the people.
And Brian, on the other end of the spectrum, you've got coding agents, which have really taken off. Dario was on stage yesterday, and he talked about how much the coding agents have improved in terms of functionality. So what is it that it's changing for you at the software engineering level, or even at the customer level, in terms of the success we have seen with coding agents?
Well, why coding agents work so well is you have labeled data, right? It either compiles or your unit tests, functional tests pass. And I think what we have to be careful of is we're making big leaps of how that coding agent works really well, because we have those labeled data of it. Will the code compile? Does it functionally meet my specification? Do you have those same guardrails for the business when you're talking about a business process? So when you put agentic AI against a business process, you need to have the same caliber of labeled data and guardrails, if you will, to make sure that when it is doing things on behalf of people, it's doing it with an outcome that's intended for the business. So we're seeing massive, I get demos weekly using Claude, using M365 Copilot as well, where we're seeing 10 days, 2 months down to a week to days. Regression testing suites being created, and really just driving using a kind of a specification-driven design pattern in that. And we're evolving architectures inside of our software development process that allow us to really bring investments in other parts of the business. For example, we have a beautiful design system that we've built for our user experience. Our SAS Vive for us is our end-to-end data and AI platform, and it's very comprehensive.
Was it using the coding agent?
What's that?
Was it using a coding agent?
Well, we do. We build it now with it, right?
Okay.
And but also it has generative AI hooks in it as well to do stuff on behalf of users. But what we're seeing with the design system is all of the design, the UX, componentry, the look and feel, we've been able to download that as context now and just give it as part of context to the Claude code agent that allows us then to basically build user experiences just like that that are completely compliant with the design specifications. And it's a really wonderful return on investment of a design system that then's married up into our agentic AI and the coding side for our development.
You're really taking advantage of the longer context lens.
Yeah.
These companies are, providing when it comes.
100%. It's basically that place that in the past, that design system was where users would go and get a reference implementation of a component. Could be a menu, could be a chart for our graphics and things like that we do for plots and all that stuff like that. But now it is now an asset used for context in our development. It's very exciting.
So Ruba, it sounds like, the trust and accountability question really kind of depends on good labeled data. That's what Brian was alluding to. Is that another vector along with hallucinations where, and I know the two could be tied, but label data, how important is that when it comes for production level deployments? I mean, you guys run a lot of the mission critical systems for your customers on public cloud. So is that really the key to trust and accountability?
Well, data readiness is key to any kind of, I would say, modern technology adoption. And I think
thought
we
it
spend
changed with machine learning. Machine learning was more structured data. You got to label it, but it sounds
still,
like
I mean,
it's
the
the same
overwhelming data that's out there is unstructured. Now it's getting access to it. It's got to be accessible.
Yeah.
And then I think the ontology of it has got to be codified as well in an organization. And then you can be empowered to use it really well. But I think this isn't AI is not something where we want to boil the ocean. So rather than saying, okay, we've now got to look at our entire data estate and clean everything up, I mean, that is going to be an impossible task, or a task that would take far longer without the ROI that's expected. What we found to be really successful is work backwards from specific use cases and address those use cases. And from there, you can determine which pieces of data really make the most difference to you. And actually, we've taken that one step further. A lot of customers are finding that they want to build their own frontier models, but it's very expensive to go out there and build a frontier model. I mean, we talk Anthropic, OpenAI, the amount of investment that's gone into those frontier models, Amazon's own frontier models of Nova. And so we launched something that we call Nova Forge, which is a model platform. And what we saw is that if you insert a customer-specific data in a certain use case, in the pre-training process. So don't go all the way and you're done with a model and now you've got to do post-training for that specific use case. You train it in pre-training, and then you insert additional synthetic data, and then we help them complete the model. They can create a frontier model that's specific for their use case. So the analogy that we use is, let's say in the human world, you've got surgeons that they finish high school, they go to college, they then go to medical school, then they do a residency and they become qualified surgeons. Well, what if you started training them when they're 7 years old, on how to do, holding a scalpel, and then eventually by the time they're 28 or 29, they're truly experts. Yes, they don't have a liberal arts education, but they're probably going to be exceptional surgeons. That's what we're seeing with frontier models and using a customer's data for specific purposes, reducing the cost, and improving the accuracy of the response that they need. And so that's something we're really excited about to support customers and helps them get ROI faster.
And customers don't care if the model is open source or not, the one that...
Well, it becomes their proprietary model once they're inserting their own data. So that's actually what's exciting about it too, is it's their own proprietary model.
Do you guys have a preference in terms of using open source versus proprietary?
No, we view it as just another technology that's out there we put in play for our customers, and I think that's something we need to start speaking more pragmatically about. I would argue that we're overspecified. We're browbeating customers with generative AI and agentic AI, and I think it's important. It is an important capability, but there's incredible value of other. Remember, agentic AI, generative AI are one element of AI, but they have taken the entire kind of storyline right now. And I'll give you examples for us. I mean, we have two centralized governments that have prevent over $10 billion worth of fraud running on machine learning models that we've developed. And those are not agentic workflows. Those are not generative AI workflows. But $10 billion is a pretty good ROI.
Of course.
So I think that it's important that we get really nuanced on when do we use it and when we don't, because it'll actually increase the trust of when generative AI, it'll increase the success rate for generative and agentic AI when we put it in the right position for a customer. For us, we have to deal, like our top 4 industries are financial services, life sciences, government, and insurance. These are all critically important decision-making that we have to help our customers through that can't be 95% accurate. They have to be 100% accurate every time. And so we are very
probabilistic systems. They need all
right. So agentic and large language models introduce a non-deterministic element that has to be overcome. Yeah. And for us, we have an incredibly important application called intelligent decisioning that allows us to build composite AI capabilities that use the best of machine learning, API integration, data source integration for context with large language models. So use the best and the strengths of large language models for their natural language interaction that lowers the barrier for users to use that capability. But it also uses deterministic models that can be explained to regulators, all in one composite application. And it's so we actually run this on AWS for a few of our customers actually. Yeah. And we have incredible outcomes with that capability. But this ability to build composite apps using the right choice of AI and governance is really, really important as we move forward with this AI conversation.
And the world of generative and agentic AI is very different in the sense the technical stack changes. You're no more talking about building databases for a solution, but everyone talks in terms of tokenization these days. So from your perspective, Ruba, how do you counsel your customers in terms of where they should be looking to apply traditional AI versus where they should be thinking in terms of, you got to tokenize your information using reinforcement learning, for example, or something along those lines?
Yeah, maybe I'll just start off by saying we're starting to pivot from thinking of AI as a product or service category to its underlying every single decision that's going to be made in every single use case and industry. So the question to the customer is, what decision do you need to make faster? Yeah. What problem do you need to solve faster? And how can AI help you do that? Making decisions on drug discovery and which ones are more effective, or helping customers with customer care solutions. And so that really is the mental model that we take with our customer conversations, is what decision do you need help making faster? And then what are the processes and workflows that are in that getting you to that decision? And then how do we support you in automating those, and how can we break it down into agents? I'll give one example that I found really impactful. It's a public example, but we worked with a few partners. It was a partner ecosystem, which I think the future of technology and AI is partnerships. No one company can do it all. We work closely with SAS on so many customer engagements. But this was Toyota Motor North America. And they wanted to look at how do they best stock their inventory for customers. And so they looked at their entire end-to-end chain, from getting the materials from their suppliers all the way to delivering it to customers and to customer satisfaction. Built multiple agents on top of a platform we have called Amazon Bedrock Agent Core, which allows them to manage all of those agents. And what they saw, and this was in about less than a year to develop this, they were able to reduce their inventory by 60%. They improved predictability of what customers wanted by 85%. They reduced manual work by 40%. And on top of that, they increased customer satisfaction. And then the kind of pushback from the table moment, they were able to get $1 billion of business value out of that. So that kind of impact then leads them to think through, okay, we've built this end-to-end set of agents that are helping us with this workflow. What's the next workflow that we want to tackle? What other decision can we make faster? And so seeking those high impact examples and seeing them all the way through, I think, is a really great model to get adoption.
Great. And Brian, I want to kind of go to employees. Okay. Because when it comes to trust and accountability, I think employees are a big part of that. Mm-hmm. And so in your case, given the fast change that we are witnessing, mm-hmm. do you think your employees trust, what the vision is when it comes to Gen AI, and how are you going about it?
Well, I'm very passionate about this topic because we come from a company with the CEO, Dr. Jim Goodnight, who's pioneered work culture. And so for us, I would argue that the first step in increasing trust with AI is increasing the trust between leaders and the workers in the organization with AI, which is that I'm going to invest in you and in your career to help you become a better employee, not just have you use AI so I can eventually displace you. That's the first level of trust that must be addressed, or you will not have AI adoption that you need in the organization. The second is, I think that what's really important right now is the employee, with AI, right, in the past, we've got this 80-20 rule for analysis has been kind of consistent, which is, data scientists and others will tell you, 80% of the time is they're gathering data, getting it into clean formats where they're actually used for model training and things like that. And 20% is left over with the kind of insightful analysis you want to make on it. And I think with generative AI and agentic AI, there is a real possibility we can flip that ratio to 20-80. What does that mean, though, for employees? That means that you're spending less time doing the data gathering and the data improvement, and you are actually focused on critical thinking and understanding, does the outcome that I'm getting through this analysis, is it executing in the right metric that I want for the business? Does it have secondary questions like, are there unintended consequences that I need to be considering? Are there other issues I need to be worried about with regards to affecting my customers themselves? Like, I want to make sure there's fair, transparent explainability and decision making. Again, if you're in fraud or in underwriting a loan, we want to make sure those are fair decisions based on consistent behaviors that we see. So I think what we see is the employees need to have the psychological safety to challenge AI results and feel empowered to challenge them, have dialogue around, okay, if this stuff is not correct, I want to be okay to state that, hey, I don't believe this answer is correct, we need to discuss this. And I think right now there's a propensity to want to just move the answer along in the business because that's the productivity return of AI. It's the inherent.
Are the tasks that your data scientists are doing now, have they changed as a result of all the Gen AI tools?
Yeah, I would tell you, if anyone in the room here, one of the most important things you could start doing is building the muscle for verification, validation frameworks. Because at the end of the day, when you are building context for AI to write code, for instance, or to train a model, you end up staring at data more, and that means what do you want to do? You want to encode the things that are important to your business around the guardrails and say, this is an answer that makes sense. It's in the general direction. Having verification frameworks, validation frameworks is so important because that's where you can kind of control the outcome and make sure that it complies with what your goals are for your organization.
So we only have a couple of minutes left. Ruba, Bloomberg Intelligence did this survey in December where we gauged the spending intentions of CEOs, and 80% plus CEOs want to invest in AI. They have allocated a budget, but still it feels like they're finding it hard to get stuff off the ground, especially in certain verticals. So what advice do you have for 2026, given we are still in January? What is it that they should be doing in terms of materializing their intentions into production deployments?
There are a couple of foundational elements that no matter what problem they're trying to solve, they should just think through. One is the change management side we talked about earlier, and I think Brian did a really nice job of how do you bring your employees along. But from a leadership perspective, it's explained the why very, very clearly. If it's not just AI for AI's sake, I think that those days are over. But it is, there are so many examples of where employees get benefits, where the company is delivering better value to their customers out of it, and looking around their peer group and wanting to be leaders there. Some view that as creating a crisis, but I think it's more important to create a level of ambition. So that's one. The second piece is thinking through the data preparedness that we talked through, and specifically tied to the decisions that most matter to the business. And then I would say the fourth is working with a competent ecosystem of partners and making sure that you've got the right level of support to help your team go along with it. So I think any leader, you're going to need advice of working with multiple partners to determine the best use cases for you, bring your people along, do the change management, support you with security, support you with the data side of things. I think that this is one where it's definitely a team sport.
Anything you want the frontier model companies to do?
Well, I think I love the continued investment in
Yeah.
terms of what they're doing. For us, we believe that no one model will rule them all. Amazon from the get-go has had a customer choice policy, and we developed this tool called Amazon Bedrock that allows customers to choose a fit-for-purpose model. The LLM providers are providing amazing capabilities for people to take advantage of. Customers are going to want to build their own models as well. I think there's room for all of that. And so we're really excited about actually seeing more and more innovation.
Brian, I'll give you the final word.
I would ask that there's a lot of leaders here, incredibly impactful people, and I'd say ask yourself, what kind of future are we trying to build here, right? So invest in people. That is a tried and true strategy. The current mode of AI, generative AI, is literally one iteration of the next. We're 50 years, we're turning 50 this year, so we've seen a lot of tech. It's one iteration in the next 50. So you're going to need to invest in your people to transition them through this curve, because everyone's doing this. So if everyone's doing this, then it's about you creating new value in your organization. So you can lift your people up and then create new value, because you want to go create new market share, right? Create new value in the organization to separate yourself out there and to know that you're in a competitive space. Invest in people. That's most important.
That's a great note to end on. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking Brian and Ruba.